いいか。
Michio was a lonely gamer until he woke up in a new world. Suddenly, he found himself with Long Sword. God gave her a chance to start over as an explorer, diving into dangerous labyrinths filled with monsters and treasure. But guys, he is already something in his mind. First, he buy a slave and complete his all fantasies. After that, he started collecting all the baddies around to become the Riz God. Everything kicks off when Michio suddenly opens his eyes and realizes he's inside an old barn. At first, he assumes the VR game just looks unbelievably real, down to the exact clothes he's wearing. While looking around, he notices a pair of sandals lying nearby. After slipping them on, the system unexpectedly labels him as a level 1 thief. Digging through some hay, he discovers his bonus sword hidden underneath. The blade's stats are way stronger than he expected, and that instantly lifts his mood. With gear in hand, Michio steps outside, curious about what kind of world he's entered. Not far away, he hears shouting and notices a group of farmers preparing to hold off a raid of bandits. He worries whether they can survive, especially since the enemy leader is stronger and wearing a special thief's bandana. As the fight breaks out, it's obvious the villagers don't stand a chance. Seeing the leader distracted, Michio realizes this is the perfect moment to strike. He dashes forward like a demon slayer and lands the first blow. Another thug charges him, but Michio swiftly knocks the weapon from his hands and takes him down. With their group falling apart, the rest of the bandits try to flee, but Michio pursues them and cuts them down one by one until he's completely out of breath. I think guys, he is acting like a demon slayer. After checking his system, Michio notices his level has climbed to 2. And he's also earned a new title as a hero. Right then, an old man approaches him, introducing himself as Somara, the village chief. Thankful for Michio's help, he invites him over to his house. Inside, Somara shows him a room filled with loot from battles. He explains that the villagers will take what they need, but the rest is all Michio's. While scanning through, Michio spots the thief's bandana, but quickly realizes it's been switched with a fake. He points it out, and Somara promises to check into it while setting up a rune for Michio to rest. When Michio lies down, a troubling thought hits him. How does he log out? He tries every command he can think of, but the system message tells him there's no exit. That's when he remembers the warning that once he entered, there was no turning back. The weight of the truth settles and he's stuck here for good. A little later, Somara returns with water and clean clothes. After leaving him alone again, Michio's thoughts spiral. If this is real, then he just killed people with his own hands. The guilt creeps in, but then he reminds himself bandits attacking villages is normal in this world. If he loses his resolve now, he won't survive. Accepting that, Michio tightens his grip on his weapon and decides he's going to be a strongest demon slayer. I think guys, he is out of his mind. That evening, Somara brings forward the man who stole the thief's bandana, and to Michio's surprise, it's one of the villagers. After confirming the real bandana, Somara asks Michio how the thief should be punished. Michio replies that they should follow the village's laws. Somara looks disappointed, then turns to the villager and casts a spell on him. Confused, Michio asks what's happening, and Somara explains that he changed the man's intelligence card, turning him into a slave. In their village, stealing means being sold into slavery. Half the money goes to the victim, and the rest is given to the thief's family since they've lost a worker. Michio then realizes Somara had hoped he'd show mercy, so this wouldn't happen, but it was already too late. Afterward, Somara hands Michio the intelligence cards of the fallen bandits, pointing out that some may carry bounties. He tells Michio to visit the night station in the nearby town of Bao, where he can collect rewards and also sell his spoils. To help him, Somara arranges a carriage for the next morning. The following day, Michio arrives in Bao, which is packed with people because of market day. He heads straight to the night station, where he meets a rude woman with a sour attitude. She informs him that 2 of the bandits had bounties on their heads, but before giving him the payout, she demands to see his intelligence card. Nervous, Michio hopes nothing embarrassing will happen, but luckily his card appears without issue. Annoyed, the woman tosses his reward at him and tells him to leave. As Michio steps outside, he notices the town's lively energy has suddenly dropped. The carriage driver warns him about shady areas nearby, including brothels. Hearing that, Michio's mind instantly spirals into wild fantasies, like there are lots baddies begging his joystick.
Oh my god!
Before long, Michio arrives at the mansion of a slave trader. The master of the house, Alan, steps out to welcome him and explains that the place has been busy lately because a new labyrinth was discovered just outside town 2 days ago. When Alan asks about the thief, Michio presents a letter from Somara that explains everything. Impressed that Michio managed to take down so many bandits, Alan praises him, but Michio brushes it off, saying they were nothing special. Alan then makes an offer 30,000 nars in exchange for the villager, who had risked his life just to steal a bandana. After handing over the thief, Michio delivers the villager's share of the money to the carriage driver, who then heads back to the village. Left alone, Michio realizes he doesn't know anyone here and barely understands this world, making him feel like a lonely loser, just like you guys.
Emotional damage!
Just then, Alan returns and asks if Michio can spare a little more time. Curious, Michio follows him back inside, this time to a much fancier room, and starts wondering what Alan is really planning. Alan then makes a proposal. Since Michio is an adventurer, he should consider buying slaves. At first, Michio is uneasy with the idea, but Alan explains that his business specializes in slaves designed to also serve as companions in more personal ways. I think guys, you know what is the meaning of personal ways.
What do you mean by that?
Hearing this, Michio's joystick is in action, but he quickly tries to calm himself when a maid enters with a tray of tea. The moment his eyes land on her, though, he notices her bouncing plots and his joystick is live in action. Also guys, from now my editing have to struggle.
Yeah, boy.
Alan quickly notices Michio's eyes wandering and smirks, recognizing a man's culture with similar tastes. Tell in the comments guys would leave this maid. Once Roxanne steps out of the room, Alan leans in and asks if Michio likes what he sees. Without wasting time, he tells him straight up, Roxanne is their most highly recommended slave. I know guys why she's as highly recommended, because she breaks everyone. Embarrassed, Michio hesitates and asks if a slave could ever betray their master. Alan explains that it's impossible. If the master dies, the slave dies too, and if they ever run away, they're immediately branded as bandits. He continues, revealing that Roxanne is a beast warrior from the Wolfkin race, making her incredibly valuable for exploring Labyrinth. On top of that, Alan adds one more bonus because humans and beastkin can't have children together. What he trying to explain guys, tell me in the comments.
Lord have mercy.
Michio wouldn't need to worry about complications. Alan assures him that Roxanne has already given her consent to serve in every way possible, so Michio wouldn't have to wrestle with guilt. Michio struggles with the idea, feeling like he'd cross a line if he went through with it. But then it dawns on him if he doesn't take her, someone else will. Swallowing his hesitation, he asks Alan how much she costs. The answer hits hard, more than 400,000 nars. Michio admits he doesn't have nearly that amount. As Alan escorts him out, Michio steals another glance at Roxanne, and Alan whispers that he's willing to hold her for 5 days if Michio can gather the money. He even tells Roxanne that Michio has taken an interest in her, and she politely says thank you daddy. Walking away, Michio decides he'll do whatever it takes to make her his. Later, he sits down at a restaurant to count his money and realizes he's about 70,000 nars short, because guys, he is not broke, just like some of you. Remembering Alan's advice, he considers the labyrinth that appeared just 2 days ago. Adventurers make cash by selling materials dropped from defeated monsters. But Alan had also warned that making a big sum quickly would be tough, and chasing bounties might be faster, but also riskier since it could put a target on his back. Deciding he has 5 days to figure it out, Michio chooses the safer route and prepares to dive into the labyrinth first. But then another thought strikes him. His sword is too powerful. If anyone saw it, they'd want to steal it, and losing it would be game over for him. To avoid that risk, he seals away his main weapon and resets his character setup. He then heads to the market to find a backup weapon. At a sword shop, Michio spots a pile of blades and notices one with an empty skill slot, meaning he can add abilities to it later. When the shopkeeper tells him all the swords are the same price, Michio immediately chooses the one with the empty slot, and also asks for protection for bed.
What? I don't believe it!
Sorry guys, I mean, protective gear to prepare himself properly. After getting his gear ready, Michio makes his way into the forest, searching for the labyrinth's entrance. There, he spots a party of adventurers heading through a strange glowing doorway, and one of them clearly looks like a mage. Curious, Michio trails them and soon finds the gate himself. Once they've gone inside, he switches back to his main sword and steps through. He arrives on the labyrinth's first floor, a dim but surprisingly clean-looking passageway. Checking his system, Michio notices his status has changed. He's now marked as a level 1 explorer and has unlocked new abilities. Remembering how equipping sandals gave him the thief class, he realizes entering the labyrinth must have automatically set him as an explorer. Scanning further, he sees the hero job listed and assigns it as his secondary role, with Explorer as his third. Wanting to test his new options, Michio tries out the dungeon walk ability. It teleports him back to the room he just came from, but when he attempts to exit the labyrinth entirely, it doesn't work. That's when he realizes the skill only functions inside the dungeon and has limited destinations. Pressing on, Michio mutters about how awkward the whole thing feels until he notices a strange tree-like creature lumbering toward him. Deciding to test his strength, He strikes and instantly takes it down in a single blow. Shocked by how easy it was, he figures it must be thanks to his oversized weapon. The monster leaves behind a branch, which he picks up and saves. Soon, another creature approaches. This time, Michio remembers one of the hero skills called Overwhelming. Activating it, he sees the enemy slow down as if time itself dragged. He raises his weapon, ready to finish it off. The monster lunges at Michio, but he manages to cut it down. Right after, he notices something strange. He feels the same heavy laziness he experienced earlier when using Dungeon Walk. Putting the pieces together, he realizes casting skills drains his MP and leaves him feeling depressed. Luckily, his sword's ability to absorb MP restores him to normal, so he decides it's smarter to avoid wasting magic until his pool is bigger. That evening, Michio stops by the guild to sell the branches he collected, but the pay is disappointing, only 273 nars. Back at the inn, he does the math. Each branch goes for about 10 nars, meaning even 10 full hours of grinding would barely give him 0 nars. That's nowhere near enough to buy Roxanne. The next morning, he heads out early but finds himself stumbling in total darkness. Then he remembers one of his bonus abilities, Teleport. Using it, he warps straight to the labyrinth's first floor. For a moment, he's excited, but panic sets in as he curses himself for stepping into such a dangerous place. Catching his thoughts slipping negative again, he quickly summons his sword and cuts down another enemy to recharge his MP. Michio keeps battling back-to-back monsters, but soon realizes he doesn't have infinite stamina. If he keeps taking damage, he won't last. On the bright side, his stats across all his jobs have leveled up. Encouraged, he pushes deeper into the dungeon. Suddenly, he notices a brick shifting out of place behind him. Curious, he squeezes through and finds a hidden room, thinking treasure must be waiting inside. Instead, it turns out to be a monster nest. Backing away, he's ambushed by another creature sneaking up behind him. Michio kills it, but almost immediately gets smacked aside by a hulking tree monster. The hit nearly drops him, and he realizes one more blow like that could finish him for good. He tries to activate Dungeon Walk to escape, but nothing happens. Trapped, he steels himself. If he dies here, that's the end. His only option is to fight. Relying on his sword's HP absorption, he regains strength while using the hero skill, Overwhelming, to slow the monsters down. His MP drains fast, but Michio pushes through with everything he has. Against all odds, he wipes out the entire nest and gathers the hardwood they leave behind. Stumbling out of the secret room, he breathes a sigh of relief, thankful his weapon can restore him for round after round. Just like me guys with my girlfriend last night. When Michio finally drags himself out of the labyrinth, looking completely worn out, he notices a crowd gathered near the castle gates. Curious, he asks what's going on. One of the townsmen explains that a dead bandit was discovered, someone who used to lurk around the area. Because of pressure from knights or rival groups, the bandits had shifted their hideout and started raiding nearby villages instead. Hearing this, Michio instantly recalls the bandits he fought earlier. For a moment, he wonders if some survivors are now targeting him for payback. But then he figures they're probably after whoever forced them out of town to begin with. Wanting to be sure, he asks how they identified the body. The man points to the severed left hand, explaining it was cut off to remove the intelligence card. That makes Michio realize they were likely hunting for bounty money. As he walks away, Michio admits to himself that grinding in the labyrinth won't get him anywhere near his goal fast enough. If he wants to buy Roxanne, he needs quicker cash, and that means going after bandits. Later, while planning his strategy, he remembers that unlike last time, these enemies won't be distracted or easy targets. He questions whether he's strong enough for a direct fight. Opening his job settings, Michio sees new roles available: warrior, swordsman, and merchant. The warrior class clearly has better effects than villager, but for this mission, he selects explorer, hero, and thief as his active jobs, preparing himself for the challenge ahead. The next morning, Michio strolls through the busy streets, scanning the crowd for anyone who might be a bandit, but everyone at the market seems normal. Then, he overhears a group of men talking about how the bandits being killed off lately are the ones who got driven out of the slum. That jogs his memory of the carriage driver mentioning shady areas nearby, so he slips into a dark alley and uses teleport. In an instant, Michio finds himself in the slums, where the foul smell of sewage nearly knocks him out. The place is filled with starving outcasts and miserable loser, but no sign of the bandits he's hunting. The stench gets so bad, he almost throws up his breakfast, and he quickly teleports back out before it overwhelms him completely. Back at the inn, Michio washes up and notices he isn't weighed down by the same depression he used to feel after using teleport several times. He figures his recent level ups must have helped him adapt, which boosts his confidence. He should be able to handle bandits now. That night, he pulls up his hood, hands his room key to the innkeeper, and accepts a lantern she offers. Out on the streets, Michio is relieved he brought it along, even if it only lights up the ground at his feet. Using the identity skill on people loitering around, he checks one after another, but they all turn out to be ordinary villagers, most likely sneaking around behind their spouses' backs. Michio is ready to call it quits when he notices a suspicious pink glow ahead, and realizes he's entered the red light district. As he walks down the street, he dodges into God's most beautiful creations, which you guys can't touch in your dreams. That's when he spots a bulky, rough-looking man harassing one of the workers, and quickly identifies him as a bandit. Once the man leaves, Michio tails him all the way toward the slums, where he finds a group gathered and assumes this must be their hideout. Using teleport, Michio sneaks in closer and overhears the men mentioning someone named Ugo. The name jogs his memory. The bandit he decapitated before was called Ugo. That means this guy is either one of Ugo's former comrades or part of his crew. By the next day, Michio notices that the brothels in the Red District shut down early, and once that happens, the bandits appear. Each group seems to stick to its own turf and avoids crossing paths. Watching the man from last night, Michio guesses that must be his personal territory, and if he targets them, the other gangs won't interfere. Later, when he returns to the inn, the keeper praises him for working so hard and even gives him a free meal. During their chat, the keeper mentions that the talk of infighting between the bandits in the slums isn't true. He explains that after a power struggle, the losers were expelled, but the ones killed recently actually belonged to the winning side that stayed in town. Whoever is hunting them is deliberately making it seem like the banished group's doing. That night, Michio lies in bed, unable to sleep, and his mind drifts to fantasies of Roxanne, thinking guys how soft her plot armors and breaks his sword in real life. Tell me in the comments guys, what kind of sword? The following night, Michio gears up with his sword and the thief's bandana before heading back to the slum. This time, he approaches a lookout directly, flashes the bandana, and offers him a gold coin for information on Ugo. The man explains that Ugo is already dead, but when Michio presses further, he tells him to wait outside. While waiting, Michio quietly observes where the man's allies are likely hiding. When the lookout returns, he says his boss is asleep and suggests Michio come inside to wait. Confident after spotting Michio's weak-looking weapon, the bandit leads him to a room and demands proof that the bandana is genuine. As Michio pretends to pull it out, the man suddenly lunges at him. After the scuffle, the bandit admits Ugo was once chosen to succeed, but got driven out by rival factions. He then sneers that he'll just take the bandana for himself and sell it, but Michio reveals it was a setup all along. He drops the bandana onto a candle, plunging the room into darkness. Then he uses his breathing technique with sword into the man, finishing him. Afterward, he severs the bandit's hand to access his intelligence card. Moving on, Michio sneaks into the next room, where several thieves are sleeping. He covers one man's face and slits his throat before cutting off his hand. When he beheads another, the noise alerts a woman nearby, but he swiftly takes her down from the side. The last bandit wakes, grabs a weapon, and swings wildly. Michio teleports outside the room, waiting for him to rush out. The moment the door opens, Michio stabs the heavyset man and removes his hand as well. Hearing movement outside, he realizes others may have noticed the commotion. Deciding not to risk it, he retreats with the 3 severed hands and teleports straight into the labyrinth. Inside the labyrinth, Michio sinks into self-loathing, calling himself trash, though he figures it's probably just his drained MP messing with his mind. Once he steps back outside and starts pulling out the intelligence cards, the faces of the bandits he killed flash in his head, leaving him uneasy. Still, he convinces himself this world runs on different rules, and that survival leaves him no other choice. Later, lying in his room, he worries that if he keeps cashing in bounties non-stop, the knights might start watching him. But if he tried redeeming them in another town, that would also look suspicious. Frustrated, Michio pushes the thoughts aside, lets his mind wander to Roxanne, and drifts off to sleep. The next day, he waits at the night station until he spots the same knight from his first bounty claim. Michio tells him he was attacked by bandits, but managed to defeat them. The knight checks his intelligence card, then heads inside with the evidence. When he returns, he confirms only 2 of the criminals had bounties and hands Michio the payment. Counting the coins, Michio's heart races. He finally has enough to buy Roxanne. Without wasting a moment, he hurries to Alan, gives him the money, and waits while Roxanne is brought out. She bows her head, thanking him for purchasing her and apologizing for doubting he'd come back. Michio gently tells her it's fine, and she quietly moves to his side. Alan then asks for their intelligence cards and finalizes the contract, officially binding them as master and slave. With a sly grin, Alan congratulates Michio for securing the girl he's been dreaming about all along. I think guys, he is man with no regrets in life. Afterward, Michio and Roxanne return to the inn, where he asks for a room meant for two. Once inside, he notices how tense she looks and gently asks if he can touch her ears. Roxanne nods, sits beside him, and he struggles to keep his thoughts in check as he lightly squeezes her soft, fluffy ears. Spotting only one bed in the room, Michio realizes the innkeeper might be the ultimate wingman, which could be why Roxanne looks uneasy. To ease her nerves, he explains that he comes from a distant land and will rely on her to teach him what's considered normal here. He also reminds her that she'll be joining him in the labyrinth. Roxanne reassures him that she's skilled with weapons and ready to help. As she unpacks, Michio notices she's barefoot. Surprised, he realizes he had only been staring at her feet. He hands her a pair of sandals, and when she slips them on, they automatically adjust to her size. She explains, equipment is made to fit its owner and promises to treasure the gift. Later, the two head to the market for gear. Roxanne asks protection, not the one you are thinking guys. She asks for a wooden shield. So Michio helps her choose one with an empty skill slot before picking out more protective equipment. Afterward, Michio decides to replace his blood-stained cloak. He tells Roxanne to pick one she likes, and when she shows him two, he carefully chooses, thinking it's a test. In reality, she was simply torn between quality and color. When he asks if she needs anything else, Michio reminds her it's a special day. Shyly, Roxanne admits she only owns the one plot armor she's wearing and needs more. Michio suggests she buy at least 2 extra sets with XL plot size. With everything purchased, the pair head back to the inn together and ready for fun. When they get back to the inn, Michio tells Roxanne to sit. But instead of taking the chair, she kneels on the floor. No guys, you are not watching an episode of Anime Hub. Smiling, he lifts her up and places her on the bed, assuring her that she'll be sleeping there too. The thought of sharing a bed makes his heart race, and without thinking, he wraps an arm around her waist. Roxanne quickly stands, trying to change the mood, and says they should take care of the equipment first. Pulling out his sword, she inspects it and gently scolds him for not maintaining something so important. She explains she wants to repurpose her old clothing for cleaning rags, and suggests he grab food while she works. But Michio insists they share a meal later, so Roxanne begins changing. He respectfully turns away, though temptation makes him glance back. Once ready, she oils and polishes his blade, explaining it will perform better this way. Soon after, the innkeeper brings hot bath water for two. Michio's excitement rises, knowing they'll finally relax together. Roxanne scrubs his back while he tries to make casual conversation to keep things comfortable. When it's her turn, she takes off her top, and Michio and me guys almost got a heart attack. He washes her carefully, starting with her back, then gently moves to her hair, keeping the atmosphere warm and tender. The closeness stirs deeper feelings, and Roxanne, noticing his intensity, playfully suggests slipping into a maid outfit. Michio laughs, and tells her there's no need he'd rather see her as she island. With trust in her eyes, Roxanne agrees, and the two share their first kiss. Under the soft glow of the lantern, only God and I know guys what type of position used. Also guys, he is no longer a V-card holder. The following morning, Roxanne wakes Michio with a gentle kiss. Though tempted, he decides to save his energy for later and suggests they focus on the labyrinth instead. While getting ready, Michio asks how weapons can be enhanced with special abilities. Roxanne explains he must be talking about skill crystals, which are created when monster skills condense. These crystals can then be merged with weapons or armor by a blacksmith. Curious, Michio asks if he can become one himself, but she tells him the craft belongs only to dwarves. When he asks about hiring one, Roxanne warns that most blacksmiths dealing in skills are shady, and direct trades are rare. Once she's dressed, Michio hands her leather armor, but the way it highlights her figure makes them quickly swap gear. After that, he uses the party organization function to add her to his team. On the way out, Michio pulls Roxanne into an alley and activates teleport, bringing her straight into the labyrinth's first floor. Shocked, she admits she's never heard of magic like that. Michio tells her to keep it secret since very few can use it. As they move deeper, Roxanne guides him toward monsters. Curious how she knows, he learns it's thanks to her wolfkin nose, which makes her skilled at tracking prey. She then asks for a magic crystal, but Michio has no idea what that island. Roxanne explains that after defeating monsters, their energy can be stored inside those crystals, and they're among the most valuable resources from the labyrinth. Since Michio hasn't been using them, he realizes he's been wasting potential all this time. Embarrassed, he calls himself a fool, but Roxanne reassures him. She adds that empty crystals can be purchased from guilds, so Michio suggests they buy one later. Soon after, they find the monster she smelled earlier. Summoning his sword, Michio cuts it down with a single strike, flexing his strength in front of Roxanne. As they move deeper into the labyrinth, Michio notices Roxanne's tail wagging happily, which surprises him. Later, they head back to the inn carrying bags full of branches, and Michio tells her it's all thanks to her strength. Roxanne admits that in her previous party, no one valued her input and she was pushed to the back, fighting quietly without recognition. Michio tells her her abilities are far too valuable to ignore, then asks her to sit beside him. He reassures her she doesn't need permission to sit close and promises he won't take advantage of it. When Roxanne replies she doesn't mind, he wraps his arms around her and asks if he can nibble her ears. She declines, so he settles for gently playing with them instead, which makes her laugh and admit it feels nice. Michio then asks if she's ever had grilled mochi wrapped in seaweed, a treat from his homeland, but Roxanne has no idea what he's talking about. She mentions that some people raise fish near the coast, but it's not quite what he meant. Curious, she asks if he plans to return to his homeland one day. Michio shakes his head, saying he won't, which means she's staying with him. Roxanne explains that most people sell slaves once they're no longer needed. Michio quickly assures her that he has no intention of letting her go, joking that her weapons are far too important to part with. Still, he admits he might add more members to their party in the future. Roxanne calmly replies that it's natural for adventurers to expand their groups, but Michio grins to himself, realizing what he really wanted was her approval for more than just teamwork. But guys, what kind of a teamwork this island? Later, Michio and Roxanne stop by the guild, where he buys 2 empty magic crystals. Handing them to her, she explains that their colors shift as they absorb energy: red, once you've defeated 10 monsters; purple after 100, green at 10,000, blue at 100,000, and the rarest white after 1 million. Most people only manage to reach green, though some are lucky enough to push to blue. With that, they return to the labyrinth. Michio easily cuts down enemies, prompting Roxanne to suggest they climb higher. Confused, he thought the labyrinth went downward, but she clarifies it actually grows upward, feeding on the remains left behind by monsters. To conquer it, she says, he must defeat the boss on each floor until reaching the very top. Realizing he needs a way to deal with groups, Michio asks if she knows any wide-range spells, but she shakes her head. They continue exploring while Michio tries practicing his bonus incantations to unlock the mage job. Unfortunately, every attempt fizzles out, and he figures his MP is too low. Just then, Roxanne points out he's taken down his 10th monster. Checking the crystal, he sees it glowing red. Hers, however, remains black since only the one landing the final blow gains energy. Suddenly, Michio notices a skill called Crystallization Upgrade. Activating it during his next fights, his crystal jumps straight to purple. Shocked, Roxanne asks how, but Michio tells her to keep it secret. She explains that green crystals usually fetch 10,000 NARs, and yellow ones can reach 100,000. Since he doesn't need the cash yet, he decides to turn the upgrade off. Testing his party settings, he sees all of Roxanne's classes and levels. Since Beast Warrior already fits well, he leaves it unchanged, but asks if she has healing magic. She replies that monk and priest jobs can use those skills, but to unlock them, she'd need to defeat enemies barehanded. Michio tells her to start punching monsters. When the next one appears, he blocks the strike with his sword, giving Roxanne the chance to hit it with her fists, though Michio ends up flexing his sword again. When Michio checks his settings afterward, nothing looks different, meaning barehanded strikes alone aren't enough. To fix this, he swaps to a weaker blade so Roxanne can land the final hit herself. But the downgraded weapon feels almost useless in his hands. And just like your joystick guys, because girlfriend is not satisfied, Roxanne charges in, and Michio is impressed by how easily she slips past the monster's attacks. He finishes it off, but when he checks his status, still no change. Looking at her stats, however, he notices the monk job unlocked for her and praises her efforts. During the next battle, Michio lowers his strength stats and swings again, but ends up one-shotting the monster. After fine-tuning his stats multiple times, he finally manages to weaken an enemy without instantly killing it. Once it's softened, he sets aside his weapons completely and finishes it barehanded, which successfully unlocks the monk job for himself. With it, he gains the ability to heal, and he even tells Roxanne he secretly switched her to monk too. Confused, she asks how, but he just tells her to keep it between them. Later, they head back to the inn. Roxanne apologizes, saying she hasn't been very helpful, but Michio assures her she was. As they get ready for their bath, he begins to undress her, though she hesitates, insisting that as a slave she should be serving him instead. Michio just laughs it off, telling her he doesn't mind. She undresses him in return, and before long, the two slip back into their night training session. I think these two are very hard-working just like me and my girlfriend. The following day, in the labyrinth, Michio and Roxanne arrive at a chamber before a massive door. She explains that it's the boss room, and only one group can challenge it at a time, so others must wait here for their turn. Roxanne looks excited to fight, but Michio hesitates, unsure if they're ready to face something that's strong. She reassures him, and as the door creaks open, they step inside. Leading the way, Roxanne mentions that if they're lucky, they might even find equipment dropped by parties that failed before them. The boss soon emerges, and Roxanne charges in, though her blows barely scratch it. She creates an opening for Michio, who strikes, but unlike the normal monsters, this one doesn't fall instantly. Working together, he chains his rush skill with her attacks until the boss finally goes down. Afterward, Roxanne picks up a strange leaf, and Michio notices that his status shows a new beast attack ability along with a fresh job called Herbalist. Roxanne explains that herbalists can make medicine from plants, which Michio figures could be useful later. But when he asks why she isn't using her beast skill, she admits she can't chant the spell correctly. Besides, incantations leave fighters wide open, so she avoids relying on them for now. They move on to the second floor, which looks nearly identical to the first. Michio then suggests going back to refight the boss, hoping to unlock Herbalist for himself. But when he steps through the exit, he's shocked to find himself thrown outside the labyrinth completely. Remembering Roxanne's earlier explanation about the waiting room, he realizes he's made a fool of himself. To cover it up, he pretends he only did it as a test. When they return to the boss chamber, Michio feels calmer than before. But the moment the monster begins, casting with a magic circle, he charges in to interrupt it and nearly takes a blow to the face. Roxanne quickly jumps in, holding the boss back long enough for Michio to slip behind it and land the killing strike. Afterward, Roxanne asks how the circle was cancelled, and Michio casually admits it's just another perk of his sword. He picks up the leaf once more and unlocks the herbalist job, immediately using it to craft medicine. Realizing the pills are antidotes, he admits he hadn't even considered that monsters could poison him. To prepare, they later visit the guild and purchase extra pills for protection. With time still left in the day, Michio suggests heading back into the labyrinth. On the second floor, they encounter a needle monster and a large caterpillar. Michio cuts down the tree-like enemy in a single blow, while Roxanne engages the caterpillar. Once it's distracted, Michio finishes it from behind, leaving a bundle of thread behind. As they continue forward, he asks if the next floor will add a third monster. Roxanne explains that multiple spawns start from the 4th floor, with groups of 4 appearing on the 8th. Soon, they run into 2 more caterpillars. Michio rushes ahead, taking one out quickly, but Roxanne warns him as the other begins summoning a magic circle. Before he can react, threads wrap around him as the monster lunges. Bracing himself, Michio blocks with his legs and slashes through it, breaking the webbing as the creature falls. Deciding they're too dangerous, he suggests focusing on caterpillars first in future battles. Later, while walking through town, Michio wonders aloud how they'd handle a fight against a larger crowd of enemies. Just then, he notices someone suspicious and quietly moves closer to Roxanne. He tells her to look carefully at the man in the shadows and see what has his attention. Following his gaze, she realizes he's watching the same trading house she once came from. Using his identify skill, Michio confirms the truth: the man is a bandit. Not long after, Michio and Roxanne stop by Alan's place to warn him that someone has been spying on the trading house. Though Alan politely thanks them, he doesn't seem too worried. Roxanne insists the man they saw was a bandit. Curious, Alan asks how they can be sure. Michio admits he picked up plenty of shady intel while gathering money for Roxanne, which makes Alan pause before revealing the real issue. This problem might actually trace back to Michio himself. Alan explains that the thief Michio sold earlier was purchased just the day before. The buyers claimed they needed time to prepare, and while one distracted Alan in conversation, the other whispered something to the slave. Since normal townsfolk wouldn't care about a thief's bandana, Alan believes the man must have ties to the bandits. And since he's no longer a slave, he's free to roam and potentially invite trouble inside. Michio asks why Alan is so calm about it, and Alan replies that it's unlikely a gang would storm a trading house in broad daylight. Besides, he has combat slaves on guard and doesn't expect to be overpowered. Hearing this, Michio tells Roxanne it's time to leave, as they've done what they could. But Roxanne brings up a kind woman who once treated her well while she was there, and Michio can see she's worried. To ease her mind, he suggests to Alan that he could work as a bodyguard, saying he doesn't want the slave he sold to cause any harm. Roxanne thanks him for stepping in, and Alan agrees, offering him 10 NARS, plus any gear or intelligence cards from bandits he defeats. Michio accepts, and Alan shows him a hidden back entrance that will let him slip in and out unseen, even at night. As they leave, Roxanne apologizes for being selfish and repeats that the man they spotted was definitely a bandit. Michio tells her to be more careful next time. Later, as he prepares to head out, he's surprised to see Roxanne already gearing up. When she insists on coming along, Michio allows it, but warns her to keep her distance for safety. When Michio and Roxanne return to Alan's trading house through the back, they regroup with him and several combat slaves. Alan instructs them to wait quietly until the bandits make their move, then extinguishes the lantern, leaving the room in darkness. After a tense silence, Roxanne whispers that the front door has been opened. The fighters ready themselves, and Alan calmly explains that he's already secured the non-combatants and caretakers on the second floor. He then asks Michio to guard them, which Michio assures was already his intention. Drawing his own blade, Alan heads off to fight. Meanwhile, Michio and Roxanne carefully move through the shadows until Roxanne senses someone drawing near. Using Identify, Michio confirms it's a level 3 bandit. Judging from his movements, he assumes the man will try to run at the first chance. The bandit darts into a nearby room, and Michio suspects he's just trapped himself. Telling Roxanne to stay back, he sneaks after him. As he approaches, Michio recalls his earlier attempts at using bonus incantations, most of which failed due to low MP. He remembers there are still a few he hasn't tested and decides to try one called Equivalent Exchange. Guessing it might trade health points, he hesitates, thinking it's too risky to use on monsters when he doesn't know their stats. Activating his rune vision, he checks the bandit and confirms they're both level 3. But with his extra jobs, Michio concludes he must have more HP. Taking a chance, he casts the spell in the dark. The magic triggers instantly, and Michio drops to the floor, realizing he's drained a massive amount of MP. While he struggles to recover, Roxanne rushes over to check on him. Moments later, Alan appears and also asks if he's okay. Alan then mentions that one of the bandits slipped past and went their way. Looking into the room, Alan notices the splattered remains and raises an eyebrow. Michio panics, worried Alan might question what happened, but instead, Alan wonders aloud if it was caused by a self-destruct orb. Curious, Roxanne asks what that is, and Alan explains that it's a rare tool that completely obliterates its target, admitting he never expected the bandits to be carrying one. Relieved that Alan didn't uncover what really happened, Michio steadies himself and takes a pill to restore some of his lost MP. Alan thanks him for the assistance and pays him as promised before they part ways. On the walk back, Michio decides he needs to return to the labyrinth quickly. He opens a portal and steps through with Roxanne, but his body immediately gives out teleporting had consumed more of his already drained MP. Frustrated at not realizing this earlier, he scolds himself while Roxanne hurries to his side, worried. A short while later, Michio cuts down a few monsters, absorbing their energy and recovering fully. Checking his status, he sees his gamble with the Equivalent Exchange spell paid off. He's unlocked the mage job at level 1, gaining access to beginner spells for fire, water, wind, and earth. Curious, he asks Roxanne what kind of magic mages usually use. She explains they can launch attacks that hit multiple enemies, create barriers, or summon fire orbs. Excited by the possibilities, Michio imagines a fireball, and instantly a magic circle forms in front of him. He casts, and a blazing orb bursts from his hand. Shocked, Roxanne points out that explorers shouldn't be able to use that kind of magic. Michio just grins and tells her to keep it between them. Soon after, another monster appears. Michio tries his new fireball spell, but even though the flames hit, the creature keeps moving. He realizes the spell will only get stronger as his mage level rises. Rushing forward, he finishes it with his sword, and the monster fades, leaving behind a single branch as loot. Michio grows curious about his new abilities and decides to test them out. He conjures a wall of flames and quickly realizes it's meant for defense rather than offense. Wanting a spell that can hit multiple enemies at once, he experiments with different chants. But nothing happens, only his MP drains away. Thinking the failure might be due to the lack of enemies, he suggests they move deeper into the labyrinth. On the second floor, two monsters appear, giving him the perfect chance. Michio calls forth a firestorm, and in an instant, both creatures are reduced to ash. Seeing how effective it was, he decides to lean on magic more during fights, wanting to protect Roxanne since she's proven herself loyal and dependable. A little while later, another caterpillar is roasted by his flames, but Michio sighs that it would be much easier if his spells packed more punch. That's when Roxanne mentions something she's heard that mages often use staves to boost their magic. Michio realizes he never considered that and grumbles that the next market day won't be for another 4 days, meaning he'll have to wait before he can buy one. Roxanne then points out that if Michio really wants a staff, he'll need to travel to Curatar, since that city has permanent shops and a huge labyrinth that attracts countless explorers. Intrigued, Michio decides it's worth visiting someday. For now, the two reach the boss chamber, where a massive insect emerges and immediately begins forming a magic circle. Michio quickly responds by casting a firewall, blocking the incoming spell. Working together, he and Roxanne bring the monster down, and Michio picks up a spool of thread it left behind. They continue onward to the third floor, where Roxanne sniffs the air and mentions that a single kobold is probably lurking ahead. Not knowing what that creature is, Michio figures this is a good chance to see for himself. Moments later, the shadowy figure of a kobold steps forward, knife in hand. Michio smirks, activates his circle, and fires a blazing orb. The creature vanishes almost instantly. Surprising him, he had expected more resistance from a level 3 opponent. Collecting the salt dropped by the kobold, Michio asks how much it might sell for. Disappointed, when Roxanne tells him it's practically worthless, He tosses it aside and begins clearing out more kobolds non-stop. Before long, his bag is completely packed with loot, so he suggests they wrap up for the day. Curious about his progress, Roxanne asks his level, and Michio casually reveals he's already a level 20 explorer. Shocked, she tells him that's incredible, but he just smiles and reminds her to keep it their little secret. At the guild to collect their payout, Michio hears a woman hawking a one-way jump to the Imperial City. Curious, he listens as Roxanne explains it's a field walk service, pay a fee, and she collapses a days-long route into minutes. Michio jokes he'd rather check out Curatar, he's got nothing to do in the capital. Roxanne adds that Curatar sits close to the Imperial City, which catches his attention. He suggests they travel, but the fee is per person, so Roxanne offers to wait. Michio decides to go alone, unlock the route, and later use his own warp to shuttle them for free. He asks the price, the guide quotes a silver coin. After he pays, she triggers her skill, opening a shimmering portal that carries him across the map. On arrival, the vast Adventurers Guild leaves him stunned. He immediately asks the guide for a hop to Curatar, and she obliges. Once there, he thanks her and warps straight back through a wall to Bal. Moments later, Roxanne greets him just as he staggers into her arms, drained from the MP cost he underestimated. Catching his breath, he smiles and gives the update. From now on, they can head to Curatar whenever they want, no escort needed. Sometime later in Curatar, Michio and Roxanne wander through the busy town streets. While Michio gets distracted by the colorful market stalls, Roxanne keeps him on track and guides him toward the labyrinth. When they arrive, they notice long lines of explorers paying fees to get in. Roxanne leans close and whispers that they can bypass the toll entirely by teleporting inside. Impressed, Michio praises her for being clever. Afterward, they step into a shop selling everyday goods. The merchant greets them and asks if they're searching for supplies or perhaps a place to live. Michio asks about weapons, but the man explains they only deal in hardware and gives directions to the weapons store. As they leave, Michio jokes about it being both a shop and a real estate office. Roxanne admits she isn't sure how the market works here. When the merchant lists rental costs for different homes, Michio realizes he's been wasting money staying at inns. Curious, he asks if anyone can rent a house. Roxanne explains that in a town this size, yes, though she quietly hints he could live anywhere using his magic. Michio decides he'd rather blend in like any other explorer. At the weapon shop, Michio uses Identify to check rods and wands. To avoid overspending, he picks a modestly priced staff, earning Roxanne's praise for his eye for quality. Browsing further, he's surprised to see staves crafted from wood, iron, and even steel. In the end, he goes with a simple wooden staff, eager to return to his comfortable nightly routine with Roxanne. Later, outside the main streets, they find a quiet neighborhood that looks ideal. Back at the hardware shop, Michio asks the merchant if anyone can move in. She explains that they can, but their intelligence cards must be verified. Curious, she asks if Michio is an explorer and what type of home he wants. Unsure, he asks about options. When she wonders if both of them will live there, Michio replies, yes, for now, though that could change later. Smiling, the merchant compliments him for thinking ahead like a true adventurer. Michio is startled, unsure if she realizes Roxanne is his slave. The merchant, however, seems more interested in Roxanne's looks, praising Michio's taste. Since Michio doesn't have strong preferences, the merchant suggests apartments near the labyrinth. But he says he'd prefer something more private, away from neighbors. Hearing this, the merchant assumes he's not a frontline fighter and recommends a house reinforced with shielding cement. Confused, Michio asks what that means, and Roxanne explains that field walk can't penetrate such walls. Michio then realizes this material could keep him from teleporting freely whenever he wants. The merchant eases Michio's concern by saying a solid partition could always be added later. Michio then asks to see the property, so she leads them to the edge of town. Outside, she mentions that the yard can be used however they like, but Michio notes how poorly kept it looks. When they complain, she explains that neglect is natural without anyone maintaining it, then suggests they try planting herbs instead. Roxanne immediately asks for seeds, and the merchant agrees. She then shifts into sales mode and starts pitching other household items, making Michio wonder if she's determined to drain his wallet. Once inside the house, she points out that the previous owners had already made a few modifications. Michio is impressed to see a washroom separated from the toilet and inspects it, puzzled at the layout. While Roxanne and the merchant discuss the kitchen, Michio slips upstairs to check out the second floor. He finds a room that has the right space and view for his nightly training, then experiments by teleporting to the adjacent room, which works perfectly. Returning downstairs, the merchant asks for his opinion, and Michio says it's satisfactory. Outside, she offers the home for 45,000 nars. Michio accepts and agrees to rent it. After his intelligence card is verified, he signs the contract. On their way out, Roxanne happily notes they received a discount, but Michio knows it's only thanks to his 30% off skill. They decide to shop for supplies the following day, but since Michio is too eager to set up, he suggests buying furniture first. Once he teleports into their new home, he can't stop going on about the new bed they'll be getting. Roxanne, however, panics when she realizes that, despite the walls being made from shielding cement, they can still teleport inside. Back in Bala, Michio pulls out his new staff with excitement, eager to put it to use. Not long after, a giant insect appears, and he hurls a fireball straight at it. The creature survives, forcing him to shoot more blasts until it finally collapses, dropping a bundle of thread as loot. That evening at the inn, Michio asks the keeper for hot water and a lantern. While waiting, he reflects on how well the room has supported him and his growing bond with Roxanne. She soon joins him at his side, clearly more relaxed around him than before. Michio wastes no time showing affection, and Roxanne responds warmly, sharing an intimate moment with him again. "I think guys I'm unable to do more editing, because I have to break my own joystick." The following morning, as they get ready to head out, Roxanne shyly brings up how much his devotion meant to her the night before, and says she looks forward to more moments like that. Embarrassed, Michio tries to stay calm, brushing her hair gently to hide his excitement. At their new place, Michio fills up water containers so Roxanne can wash up. Afterward, he heads out to explore the Kiritar Labyrinth, where he spots a group of knights selling maps of the dungeon. Amused at the clever side business, he decides to buy one. Paying the entry fee, he steps inside and quickly realizes the place is packed with adventurers. Finding a quiet corner, he teleports back home to link their residence to the labyrinth. When he arrives, he proudly tells Roxanne they can now enter the Kiritar Labyrinth without ever paying again. She curtsies playfully and greets him, making Michio smile as he strokes her hair and pulls her close. Roxanne insists she still needs to clean up, but Michio brushes it off and enjoys the moment with her until a knock at the door interrupts them. Their furniture has been delivered, but Michio refuses to let the delivery man step inside, not wanting anyone to figure out they can teleport into their home. Once the essential furniture is arranged, Michio decides it's time to test out their new setup. He pulls Roxanne close, and the two share their first night together on the new bed. Tried everything you can think of, guys. The next morning, Michio wakes as Roxanne greets him with her usual kiss. Though he wishes life could stay that way forever, he knows lounging around won't cover expenses. He tells her it's time to head for the labyrinth. After waiting their turn at the first floor boss chamber, they finally step inside. A muscular kobold wielding a cleaver charges out, showing off abs like it came from a gym. Roxanne strikes first, but when the monster swings back, its attack feels sluggish. Michio, unimpressed, finishes it off with a single blow. On the second floor, Roxanne notes that half the enemies seem to be kobolds, meaning it's safe for Michio to practice magic, but he finds the experience boring and suggests they wrap it up early and do something different. They teleport back to their apartment, where Roxanne advises him to rest. Michio, however, insists he needs her by his side and asks what she plans to do. When she mentions buying seeds, he decides to join her and proposes they try gardening after a meal. In town, the merchant greets them warmly. While she goes to fetch the seeds, Michio browses tools and jokes about needing a hose. Roxanne teases that he doesn't, since he already has one. Soon, the merchant returns and explains the seeds to Roxanne, while Michio picks up a hoe, thinking her hands should be saved for better things. Back home, Michio suggests they till the whole yard. Roxanne offers to help, so he has her sharpen scraps to turn into a fence. Working together, they create their first garden. As Michio admires their progress, Roxanne appears with fresh clothes and offers to handle the laundry. While he changes, she points out they could use a proper tub for washing. Inspired, Michio visits a cooper and orders one. Spotting a larger version, he asks if that's the biggest available. The craftsman says he can build larger tubs on request, even full bathtubs. Michio grins and asks for one wider than his arm span. When asked about the depth, he drifts into daydreams, imagining all the fun he and Roxanne might have in a bathtub that size. Eager to see his daydream come true, Michio asks the price of the massive tub and learns it will cost about 2,000 nars. Wanting to make it happen, he and Roxanne dive back into the labyrinth to earn the funds. On the third floor, they defeat a boss and find a strange cobalt flower. Michio wonders what it might be, and Roxanne explains it's a type of grain that can be ground into flour, even tastier than what's sold in town. Just as they plan to push toward the fourth floor, Roxanne's stomach rumbles. Michio laughs and suggests they take a break for dinner instead. Back at their place, Michio prepares a meal. When she asks what it is, he tells her it's white cream stew, something from his homeland. Roxanne admits she's never heard of it, so he dishes it up. After her first bite, she's shocked by the flavor, calling it thick and delicious. Michio grins at her reaction and promises there's plenty more. She thanks him warmly and vows to do even better tomorrow. Amused, Michio thinks about the upcoming bathtub delivery and imagines even more possibilities. Later, in the labyrinth, they encounter a huge lamb-like monster. Michio realizes his confidence partly comes from Roxanne's fearless fighting and upbeat attitude. Roxanne assures him the beast isn't as dangerous as it looks, and Michio charges. To his surprise, the creature uses a spell that paralyzes him on the spot. He worries Roxanne might be in danger, but she narrowly dodges being crushed. Seeing her targeted, Michio pushes through, heals her, and unleashes his rush skill in rapid slashes. Roxanne quickly joins in, and together they overwhelm the beast until Michio lands the final blow. Once the battle ends, he checks if Roxanne is safe. She explains that the monster's ability put him to sleep for a while. Michio realizes it must be the Beep Sheep skill, which either knocks targets out or puts them under. Feeling guilty for not noticing sooner, he apologizes and tells her she means too much to risk losing. With that, he suggests they wrap it up for the day, since his special order should be arriving soon. Roxanne looks puzzled until they reach the house, where a cart suddenly rolls into the yard carrying a gigantic bathtub. Both of them stare in shock at its enormous size. Once the delivery man leaves, Michio suggests bringing the oversized tub inside. Curious, Roxanne asks what it's for, and he explains it's meant for soaking and relaxing. He then asks her to fetch the water jugs, using water wall and fireball. Michio spends hours filling and heating the tub until it's finally ready by nightfall. Tired, but proud, he insists he won't be the only one enjoying it, since he went through all that effort. Surprised but smiling, Roxanne agrees to join him. Michio slides into the warm bath first, enjoying the comfort, before Roxanne arrives to step in. Wanting to make it special, he shows her a handmade soap, explaining it's better than regular body wash, and after she tries every soap in the bath tap. That night, while reflecting on everything, Michio realizes he can't keep relying only on Roxanne in fights. If he wants to protect her properly, he'll need to recruit more allies for the front line. On the 7th floor, Michio tosses out a fire spell and burns a rabbit on the spot. Roxanne praises him, and he bends down to pick up the fur it dropped. She points out that selling many pelts could be useful. Thanking her, Michio follows as they head to the Imperial City. There, she explains that guilds don't pay much for fur, but clothing shops do because noble ladies love warm coats made from rabbit skins. While Michio waits outside a shop, Roxanne comes back and says the store will only buy if they bring at least 100 pelts. With no choice, they return to the labyrinth. She quickly tracks down another rabbit with her nose, and Michio burns it too, even though he feels bad for the cute creature. Soon, they reach the boss room. The door opens, and a huge rabbit leaps out. At first, Michio says it looks harmless, but the beast suddenly screeches and moves super fast. It charges at Roxanne, but she blocks with her shield and pushes it away, which amazes Michio. The rabbit then goes for him, but he slows it with overwhelming and cuts it down. When the body vanishes, meat is left behind. Michio suggests eating it, but Roxanne proposes roasting it properly. Back home, she cooks a roast, and Michio is shocked at how good it tastes. Excited, he tells her they should keep hunting rabbits for both meat and fur. They return to the dungeon and continue hunting, collecting more pelts and food. Roxanne then mentions that the boss rooms on this floor are spread apart. Later, in one waiting room, they meet a lone man resting. He explains he's been grinding on this floor for over 2 years, saving money until he can find teammates. Listening to him, Michio feels reminded of how he once struggled alone. The man smiles, saying his luck has finally turned, and heads into the boss chamber. Soon, the doors open again, signaling Michio and Roxanne's turn. They walk inside, and Michio draws his sword, but this time, the boss is already standing in place, staring at them. Michio senses the air is heavier than usual and prepares himself, knowing this battle will be different. When the rabbit charges at him, Michio slows it down like before and finishes it off with his blade. Expecting something unusual, he scans the area, but instead notices a faint shine on the ground. Curious, he walks closer and finds a piece of equipment. Roxanne points out that it probably belonged to the party they saw earlier, since the boss had already been active before their turn. Among the items, Michio picks up a dark-colored magic crystal. Roxanne explains that crystals like this can be combined easily by pressing them together. Remembering the lone adventurer they met earlier, Michio quietly merges the crystals, feeling a sting of sadness. Later that night, back at his house, he can't stop thinking about the man and how quickly fate can change inside a labyrinth. While trying to rest, doubts creep in, was it worth risking his life like this? And would he end up the same way? Michio sits awake, unable to calm his mind. Noticing his unease, Roxanne gently asks if he's having trouble sleeping. He admits he'll probably fall asleep eventually. To reassure him, Roxanne moves closer, wrapping her arms around him and offering comfort pillows. The following morning, Michio and Roxanne step back into the labyrinth, where they come across a giant spider and a goat-like beast. Remembering the fallen adventurer, Michio hardens his resolve, determined not to hesitate again. Together, they cut down the creatures with ease. Soon after, another rabbit appears, and Michio quickly finishes it, collecting the fur. When he checks their storage, he realizes they've gathered an impressive 300 pelts. With that, the two decide to make a trip to the Imperial City. At the shop, Michio informs the clerk that they want to sell all 300 pelts. The attendant warns it will take some time to process, given the amount, but offers to let them browse the display room while waiting. Inside, Michio notices elegant silk nightwear on display and imagines how it might look on Roxanne. A female shop worker explains that noble ladies often buy them as sleepwear. Curious, Michio asks Roxanne her opinion, but she shyly avoids answering. Deciding on his own, Michio purchases 2 sets. Roxanne is surprised and asks if he's certain, but he smiles, saying it's his way of thanking her. Grateful, she softly thanks him, and together they choose the colors. Soon after, the male clerk returns with their payment, adding a small bonus for the bulk delivery. With their earnings in hand, Michio and Roxanne head home. Later, Roxanne expresses her thanks once more, promising to wear one of the outfits for him. Michio, blushing a little, suggests they take a bath first. While preparing the tub, however, he realizes he's running low on magic power. Frustrated, he decides to drag Roxanne along back into the labyrinth so he can recharge through battle. Not long after, Michio and Roxanne step onto the 7th floor, where 3 monsters appear at once. Roxanne immediately charges forward, taking down 2 of them with ease. The last one rushes Michio, while he's distracted by thoughts of the gift he bought her. Running low on magic energy, Michio still manages to strike it down, but the effort leaves him collapsing to the ground. Roxanne hurries over in concern, but he brushes it off, blaming himself for letting his guard down. Later that evening, the two relax together in the bath. Michio notices his hand still feels sore, and Roxanne carefully checks it. He jokes that it might heal faster with her help, and she playfully humors him. Her lighthearted response eases his mood, and he admits the pain doesn't feel so bad anymore. Feeling reassured, the two share a quiet laugh, and the tension from earlier melts away. Not long after, Roxanne steps into the room, dressed in the new nightwear they had bought earlier. The sight leaves Michio stunned, his mind almost short-circuited by how striking she looks. When she twirls, he realizes she's wearing it with simple confidence, no extra layers. Speechless, Michio finally pulls her close, and the two share a loving moment, their bond deepening even further. The next morning, Michio tries to wipe out 3 rabbits at once with a firestorm spell, but the magic fizzles, forcing him to switch to his blade. After a tough fight, he realizes their current strength isn't enough for the challenges waiting beyond the 8th floor. As he thinks about ways to strengthen their group, Roxanne notices a glowing crystal left behind by the monsters. Later, at home, Michio inspects the crystal and guesses it could be combined with gear that has an empty skill slot. The problem, he muses, is finding a dwarf skilled enough to forge it. Just then, Roxanne walks in carrying lunch. Michio apologizes for not helping, but she smiles and says cooking and cleaning are her specialties. They sit down to eat, and afterward, Michio shows her the crystal again. To their surprise, it has shifted from green to yellow. He suspects it's because he fused 2 crystals earlier. Realizing how valuable it has become, Michio figures selling it could fetch them a fortune. Still, he decides to take another step, visit Alan and even prepare a will. Roxanne is shocked, but Michio explains that anyone entering labyrinths must accept the risk of dying. He wants to ensure that if he falls, Roxanne is set free. Kneeling down, Roxanne begs him not to talk like that, insisting she will protect him with her life. She swears that as a warrior, she couldn't live dishonorably if her master died. Michio pushes back, saying even illness could take him one day, but Roxanne vows she would find a cure. Moved by her loyalty, he softens and asks why she's so determined. She tells him simply that he's a good man who's given her strength and purpose. Touched by her words, Michio drops the idea of a will, but insists they're still going to see Alan. On the way, he admits he's decided to expand their team. Roxanne agrees, noting that from the 8th floor onward, monsters attack in groups of 4, so more allies are needed. Michio daydreams about recruiting a female frontline fighter if he focuses on magic, though his excitement makes Roxanne roll her eyes. Still, she admits it's a smart plan. When they reach Alan's mansion, Michio tells Roxanne to sit quietly, so she won't appear like she's being displayed for sale. Soon, Alan joins them, and Michio apologizes for always dropping by unannounced. Alan waves it off and asks what brings them this time. Michio explains he's looking for another companion, ideally a blacksmith slave. Alan frowns and admits it's possible, but rare, explaining that dwarves with such skills almost never end up in slavery, and when they do, their value is so high they cost as much as luxury treasures. After hearing about the rarity of blacksmiths, Michio asks Alan if there are dwarves who aren't smiths at all. Alan explains that dwarves are excellent companions, regardless, though they're usually better suited for support. He admits he only has one dwarf available, but her nature doesn't really fit combat. The moment Michio hears she's female, he becomes curious about what role she might excel at and turns to Roxanne for her opinion. Roxanne, a little surprised, suggests they should at least meet her first. Michio agrees, so Alan heads off to prepare the introduction. Not long after, a woman steps in and announces the dwarf is ready. Roxanne's eyes brighten, and Michio realizes this must be the same woman who had shown Roxanne kindness before. Soon, the dwarf arrives, and Alan introduces her as Sherry. At first glance, Michio notes she seems about the same age as Roxanne. While sizing her up, he can't help but wonder if she'd truly be strong enough to face the dangers of the labyrinth. Sherry bows politely and introduces herself as a level 10 explorer. Michio isn't shocked, reasoning that she should be capable of entering dungeons without issue. However, Sherry then admits that she tried to become a blacksmith but failed. Interested, Michio asks Alan for permission to question her directly, which Alan agrees to. Sitting across from her, Michio asks how she was unable to qualify. Sherry explains that explorers only gain the chance to choose the blacksmith path upon reaching level 10, but she lacked the right aptitude. Curious, Michio asks what determines it, and she tells him it depends on one's skills and performance within labyrinths. Hearing this, Michio assumes she might not be of much use in battle, but then he remembers how he himself had unlocked jobs like hero, thief, and mage, and wonders if blacksmith might be different, perhaps an ability that can't be acquired the same way. Michio asks Sherry if someone who failed to become a blacksmith once could still manage it later on. Sherry's answer isn't clear, which makes him think there must be other hidden requirements. He begins to suspect that if she meets those conditions, she might still unlock the blacksmith role someday. Not wanting to waste the chance, Michio decides she could be the ideal choice for their next teammate. At that moment, Sherry speaks up for herself, politely but firmly asking Michio to consider her. After a short exchange, Alan takes her away, leaving Michio and Roxanne alone. Michio wonders aloud why Sherry was so forward, and Roxanne explains that she probably feels it's an opportunity she can't pass up. Michio then asks Roxanne directly what she thinks of Sherry's potential. Roxanne admits she doesn't know a lot about dwarves, but adds that Sherry might be able to make up for her weaknesses if she works hard enough. Relieved by her cautious support, Michio starts to feel more confident about his decision. But before he can relax, Roxanne quickly adds that Sherry may not be able to contribute much for long. Puzzled, Michio asks what she means. Roxanne explains that dwarves need to be at a certain age to show their full abilities, and Sherry may be too young. To be sure, she points out they should check her ears, since dwarf ears grow thinner as they get older, and Sherry's already look slim. A few minutes later, Alan returns. A woman gestures for Roxanne, and she leaves to speak with her privately, leaving Michio in the room alone with Alan. Alan looks at Michio and asks for his decision. Michio answers that it depends on the cost. With a knowing grin, Alan points out that while Sherry doesn't carry the skills of a blacksmith, she still has her own kind of value. That's when Michio realizes why Roxanne had been sent away earlier. The two men go back and forth, and after some hard bargaining, Michio manages to bring the price down. He also requests that Sherry be given clothing like Roxanne's, and Alan agrees to arrange it. When Roxanne comes back into the room, Michio tells her he's decided to take Sherry in. She pauses for a moment, then smiles, saying she's happy about it. Even so, Michio wonders if her feelings are that simple, or if his own guilt is making him overthink. Soon after, Alan escorts Sherry in, and she bows politely. As Michio studies her, Roxanne steps forward and introduces herself as Michio's first companion. That surprises Michio, and it surprises Sherry, too. She even admits she thought Roxanne was his wife. Roxanne denies it with a small laugh, while Michio feels a sting of disappointment at her words. Once the contract is completed, Alan explains the outfit will be finished in about 10 days. Michio then adds Sherry to his group and checks her abilities. Since she admits she doesn't know how to awaken her blacksmith path, Michio decides to have her test different things until they figure it out. He then announces they're returning to his home in Kuritar. Sherry, shocked, asks if anyone in their team is an official adventurer. Roxanne calmly says no. Sherry finds this odd, wondering how they manage like that. Michio assumes she noticed Explorer on his card and guessed they use Field Walk. To end the questions, Michio teleports them straight into his house. Sherry is stunned by the sudden change and blurts out if he can really use several jobs at once. Michio brushes it off, saying he only teleported them. When she pushes further, she recalls legends of gods who could handle multiple roles. Michio smirks and simply tells her to think of him the same way. Michio asks Sherry what weapon she prefers, and she confidently replies that she favors a maul. Roxanne then suggests that both she and Sherry can hold the front line while Michio provides support with magic from the back. Hearing that, Sherry's eyes widen in surprise. She hadn't realized Michio could also cast spells. Later, while strolling through the streets of Kuritar, Michio asks if it's common for dwarves to use heavy weapons like mauls. Sherry explains that while dwarves may be short, their physical strength lets them swing heavier arms without issue. They soon stop by a weapon shop, where Michio is overwhelmed by the choices. Sherry, however, points to the simplest and least expensive option. On closer inspection, Michio notices the weapon has an empty skill slot. After Sherry tests its weight and balance, assuring him it's good enough, Michio agrees to purchase it. Back at their home, Michio brings out new leather shoes for Roxanne and asks her to hand her old pair down to Sherry for dungeon use. He also mentions getting her a leather jacket for protection, since they can't secure proper armor just yet. Sherry frowns and points out there must be armor sets in her size, while Roxanne calmly notes that gear size doesn't matter much in labyrinth battles. Later in the kitchen, while preparing dinner, Michio announces that they'll head back into the labyrinth soon and asks if Sherry wants to come along. Excited, she quickly gets ready in her new gear. Michio inspects her weapon again and asks if she knows about empty slots. Sherry explains that some explorers believe skill crystals only bond with weapons that still have empty slots, and that's the theory most accept. When Michio asks if the theory about skill slots has ever been proven, Sherry explains that no one can actually see them, so it's impossible to know for sure. Michio grins, feeling lucky to have something unique in his possession. The two continue chatting about the subject, and he admits he's surprised by how much she knows. Sherry says she once questioned an expert who gave her the explanation. Curious, Michio then asks about the adventurer class. Sherry replies that it's considered a mythical job, no one has ever obtained it, and most believe it doesn't exist. Later, in the labyrinth, Roxanne picks up a scent while Michio readies himself, eager to impress their new companion. She soon spots a monster sheep, and the group rushes forward. Determined to show off, Michio cuts it down with a single strike. Sherry is stunned, but instead of praising him, she turns to Roxanne and asks how she managed it. Michio's excitement fades, though he quietly notes his magic energy has recovered and decides it's time to head home. After teleporting them back, Sherry quickly asks if he can warp outside dungeons as well and what level he's at. Michio answers that he's already level 33. Roxanne is shocked, having thought he was only level 20. Sherry is equally surprised and asks if his weapon is the reason. Michio pats her head with a smile and tells her to keep that guess to herself. That evening, Michio notices the food Sherry prepared and compliments the smell. He invites her to sit, but she hesitates until Roxanne reassures her that their master prefers to eat together. Michio serves himself, then starts to serve Sherry next, but catches Roxanne's sharp glance. Quickly correcting himself, he serves Roxanne first, earning a grateful smile, then turns to Sherry. They eat peacefully until Sherry asks why Michio insists on entering the labyrinth between meals and chores. Michio explains that his sword absorbs magic power, so he restores his MP by fighting. He also points out that Wolfkin are famous for their warrior classes, while dwarves are best known for blacksmith skills. Curious, he asks if humans have any specialties. Sherry pauses, then answers bluntly that humans are mostly good at chasing women, just like you guys. After a long day, Michio announces that it's time for a proper bath and jokingly tells Roxanne and Sherry they should join him, since he's only human. The girls laugh it off, but eventually agree, and the three head into the bathroom together. Michio nervously expects something dramatic, but instead, he finds himself listening to the girls chat casually while he fumbles with his towel. Feeling left out, he nearly panics until both step into the bath with him. Trying not to look too overwhelmed, Michio notices Sherry sitting quietly, while Roxanne steps in front with her usual confidence. Sherry, on the other hand, grumbles about how unusual this all feels for her, while Michio can't help but marvel at the situation. Instead of anything wild, he focuses on helping them wash up. With laughter and splashing all around, the mood shifts from tense to lighthearted, turning into more of a friendly bathhouse comedy scene than anything else. By the end of it, Michio thinks to himself that he's living every adventurer's dream, relaxing with companions after a long dungeon crawl. That night, before going to sleep, Michio asks Sherry to join them. He jokes that as part of the group, she should give him a goodnight kiss routine just like Roxanne does, which makes both girls laugh. Michio nearly trips over his words, but quickly explains it's just a fun way to build team spirit. Roxanne teases him for being impatient, while Sherry shyly agrees, promising she'll do her best. Later, Roxanne claims her usual spot beside Michio, while Sherry watches from the side, still unsure of her place in the group. Michio reassures her that there's no need to rush, everything will fall into place with time. As the night winds down, the three finally settle in for some rest. The next morning, Michio checks his status screen and is shocked to see his stats have jumped again. And now guys, he became a clapping monster. With renewed determination, he vows to keep adding more baddies in the group and someday build a true worthy of the labyrinth with lots of baddies. And that's it for today's video guys. Watch the following video, and I will catch you in the next one.